Hashtag how to maintain a language you have already learned. You spent years learning a language. Hundreds of hours of studying vocabulary, wrestling with grammar rules, watching foreign films, practicing conversations until your brain felt like it might actually short-circuit. And then life happened. Work got busy. Travel plans fell through. The language slowly faded into the background, like a song you used to know every word to, until one day you opened your mouth and almost nothing came out. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone, and more importantly, you are not starting from zero. Today we are talking about how to maintain a language you have already learned, and how to keep it alive without turning your entire life upside down. Language maintenance is one of the most underrated topics in the language learning world. Everyone loves talking about acquisition, the excitement of learning something new, the dopamine rush of that first real conversation. But maintenance? That is the quiet, unglamorous work that actually determines whether your investment pays off long-term. Studies in psycholinguistics consistently show that without deliberate maintenance, adults can lose significant proficiency in a second language within just 6 to 12 months of discontinued use. We are not talking about a small vocabulary dip. We are talking about measurable decline in fluency, listening comprehension, and grammatical accuracy. The brain is ruthlessly efficient. If it decides a skill is no longer being used, it deprioritizes the neural pathways associated with that skill. That is simply how memory consolidation works. But here is the empowering truth: maintaining a language is dramatically easier than learning it from scratch. The foundational architecture is already built in your brain. The grammar patterns are there. The vocabulary is stored, even if it feels locked away. Your job is not to rebuild the house. Your job is to keep the lights on. The first principle of effective language maintenance is consistency over intensity. This is where most people go wrong. They disappear from a language for 3 months, panic, then spend one entire weekend cramming vocabulary lists and watching 4 hours of foreign news broadcasts. That approach produces short-term familiarity but almost no long-term retention benefit. Research on the spacing effect, first formally described by Hermann Ebbinghaus in the 19th century and extensively validated since, tells us that shorter, more frequent exposures to material produce far stronger long-term memory than the same total amount of time crammed into a single session. 20 minutes every day is not just better than 2 hours once a week, it is dramatically better. For language maintenance specifically, even 10 to 15 minutes of daily contact with your target language can be enough to keep a high intermediate or advanced speaker sharp over extended periods. So what does that daily contact actually look like in practice? The answer depends on your level and the language in question, but the most effective maintenance habits tend to fall into 3 broad categories: passive exposure, active production, and structured review. Passive exposure means consuming content in your target language without necessarily working hard to understand every single word. This includes listening to podcasts during your commute, watching television shows with subtitles in the target language, reading news headlines, or even just following social media accounts that post in that language. The goal here is to keep your ear calibrated and your brain engaged with the rhythm and flow of the language. For example, if you maintain French, subscribing to a French YouTube channel about a topic you genuinely enjoy, cooking, history, design, anything, means you are getting real linguistic input attached to real interest. You are not studying. You are just living partially in French. Active production is where the real maintenance magic happens, and it is also where people tend to drop off first. Because production takes more effort than reception. Active production means speaking or writing in your target language. This could be journaling for 5 minutes each morning in Spanish, recording a short voice memo in Japanese describing your day, or joining a weekly online language exchange where you spend 30 minutes speaking with a native speaker. Platforms like Tandem, HelloTalk, and italki have made finding conversation partners easier than at any point in history. The critical thing to understand is that production forces your brain to retrieve language rather than simply recognize it, and retrieval is what actually strengthens memory traces over time. If you only ever consume, your passive skills will stabilize but your active fluency will erode. Structured review refers to the deliberate, systematic practice of vocabulary and grammar, and for maintenance purposes, a spaced repetition system is your best tool. Apps like Anki allow you to build decks of vocabulary cards that surface at scientifically optimized intervals, showing you a word just before you are about to forget it, which is precisely the moment when reviewing it does the most good. A maintenance Anki habit of 10 minutes per day can keep thousands of vocabulary items active in your long-term memory with very little total time investment. Now let us talk about something that does not get discussed enough in language maintenance conversations: the role of emotional connection. The languages we maintain most successfully over decades are almost always the ones we have real emotional stakes in. Think about immigrant communities. Research consistently shows that heritage language speakers who have regular contact with family members in that language, who associate it with love, belonging, humor, and identity, maintain dramatically higher proficiency levels than those who only ever used the language in academic contexts. This tells us something important: maintenance is not purely a cognitive exercise. It is also an emotional and social one. If you are maintaining a language that you learned primarily through textbooks and classroom instruction, one of the most powerful things you can do is build an emotional and social layer onto it. Find a community. Join an online forum where people discuss shared interests in your target language. Watch a television series that genuinely moves you emotionally, in that language. Find music in that language that gives you actual goosebumps. The more emotionally resonant your contact with the language is, the more your brain will prioritize retaining it. This is not motivational fluff. It reflects real neuroscience about how emotional salience affects memory encoding. Another critical dimension of maintenance that people overlook is the importance of tracking your proficiency honestly. It is very easy to tell yourself that you are maintaining a language when you are really just maintaining a comfortable relationship with easy content you have already internalized. If you have been watching the same genre of shows in your target language for 2 years and they feel completely effortless, that is a sign you need to push slightly beyond your comfort zone. Maintenance does not mean stagnation. It means actively preventing decline, which sometimes requires a small amount of deliberate challenge. Reading a newspaper editorial, listening to a fast-paced radio debate, or attempting to explain a complex opinion in a conversation, these moments of productive struggle are what keep your proficiency genuinely intact rather than just feeling intact. Let us address the specific challenges of maintaining multiple languages simultaneously, because many LangBridge viewers are working with 2, 3, or even 4 languages at different levels. The key principle here is a concept linguists call language prioritization. You cannot give equal maintenance attention to every language every day without either burning out or spreading your attention so thin that nothing actually gets maintained properly. The practical solution is to rotate focus intentionally. Give your strongest maintenance language the lightest daily touch, since strong languages are more resilient to short gaps. Give your weaker maintained language slightly more deliberate practice. Schedule specific weeks or even months where one language gets elevated focus. Think of it like fitness training. You do not train every muscle group at maximum intensity every single day. You rotate, you prioritize, you give yourself recovery time while keeping the system generally active. It is also worth addressing what happens when you experience a noticeable decline despite maintenance efforts. This happens. Travel disruptions, major life transitions, periods of intense work stress, these things interrupt even the best habits. The first thing to understand is that reactivating a language is almost always far faster than learning it initially.